in the morning.
Welcome back to our channel, your premier source for the most explosive updates from Genoa City. Today is a beautiful day to dive deep into the dramatic twists and turns of our favorite daytime drama. We have some truly heartbreaking and suspenseful developments to unpack, so grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let us explore the shadows lurking behind the glamour. Let us get started. Young and the Restless Spoilers. The devastating reality of Nikki Newman's condition has sent an apocalyptic shockwave through the very foundation of Genoa City. After undergoing a highly dangerous and delicate surgical procedure to remove a malignant tumor pressing against her optic nerve, the Newman matriarch has awakened to a terrifying, impenetrable darkness. The world-class medical specialists have delivered the soul-crushing verdict that no one in the family was prepared to hear. Nikki has lost her vision permanently. The vibrant, powerful woman who once commanded corporate boardrooms and high society galas is now confined to a sterile hospital bed, entirely swallowed by a world of absolute black. This catastrophic physical loss is only the beginning of a profound psychological unraveling that threatens to tear her family apart from the inside out. As the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitors echoes in the cold room, a chilling realization sets in for everyone involved in her life. Will Nikki Newman ever be able to find the light again, or is she doomed to wander in this terrifying darkness for the rest of her days? Victor Newman, the ruthless and unyielding patriarch of the Newman Empire, finds himself completely paralyzed by a situation he cannot control or buy his way out of. He stands by his wife's bedside, consumed by an agonizing mixture of profound grief and suffocating guilt. Victor desperately vows to be her eyes, promising to dedicate the rest of his life to guiding her through this tragedy. However, his desperate attempts to soothe her pain are met with a cold, impenetrable wall of resentment. Nikki is not just suffering from a physical ailment, she is drowning in emotional agony, and she places the blame squarely on her husband's shoulders. She vividly remembers the relentless, toxic stress Victor brought into their home, from his ruthless corporate wars to his horrific manipulation of Matt Clark. She firmly believes that the agonizing marital strife pushed her fragile body to the absolute breaking point. Can Victor's immense wealth and power ever buy his wife's forgiveness, or is his vast empire entirely worthless in the face of her deep-seated resentment? The fragile agreement to hit the reset button on their fractured marriage has spectacularly crumbled before it even had a chance to begin. Victor and Nikki had cautiously agreed to start over, but the heavy, suffocating ghosts of the past simply refused to stay buried. Nikki had demanded a genuine apology and a display of remorse from Victor for his past sins, particularly his reckless decision to bring the dangerously unstable Patty Williams back into their orbit, a decision that nearly cost Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins their lives. Victor, driven by his monumental pride and stubbornness, categorically refused to apologize or acknowledge the immense collateral damage of his actions. This toxic cycle of pride and punishment has created an insurmountable chasm between the once legendary couple. With Nikki now trapped in permanent darkness, the emotional distance between them feels wider and more dangerous than ever before. How can a marriage possibly survive when a husband's pride is valued far more than his wife's desperate need for peace? Into this suffocating void steps a man who knows all too well the bitter taste of tragedy and the agonizing road to recovery: Jack Abbott. Bypassing the heavy Newman security detail, Jack arrives at Nikki's hospital room not as a corporate rival, but as a deeply empathetic friend. He brings with him a soft, comforting presence that sharply contrasts with Victor's overbearing and aggressive energy. Jack does not offer Nikki empty promises or grandiose vows to fix the unfixable. Instead, he offers genuine, quiet empathy. They share a profound bond forged in the fires of past addictions, mutual struggles, and a deep, enduring respect that has survived decades of Genoa City warfare. When Jack holds Nikki's hand, he provides a steady, calming anchor in her terrifying new reality. Is Jack simply acting as a devoted friend in a time of crisis, or is there a deeper and resolved romantic passion reigniting in the quiet shadows of the hospital room? As the days turn into long, agonizing nights, Nikki finds herself leaning more and more heavily on Jack Abbott. She finds a rare, precious solace in the gentle cadence of his voice and the tender warmth of his touch. Jack becomes her absolute emotional anchor in the terrifying abyss of her permanent blindness. With Jack, Nikki feels entirely safe, free from the controlling, suffocating, and manipulative machinations that define her life with Victor. Jack listens to her fears without trying to engineer a solution, allowing her to grieve the loss of her sight on her own terms. This profound emotional intimacy is creating a powerful, unbreakable tether between the two former lovers, drawing them closer with every passing hour. Will this intense emotional reliance cross the dangerous boundary into a devastating romantic betrayal that could destroy multiple families? The fragile peace in Nikki's hospital room is violently shattered when Victor Newman makes a horrifying discovery. The mustache walks into the room only to find his oldest, most hated rival holding his vulnerable wife's hand in an intimately tender embrace. An explosive, blinding rage instantly consumes the Newman patriarch. The historic, blood-soaked Abbott-Newman rivalry flares up with the intensity of 1,000 burning suns. Victor does not view Jack as a compassionate friend offering solace. His paranoid, jealous mind instantly paints Jack as an opportunistic predator. Victor is convinced that Jack is intentionally exploiting Nikki's tragic medical crisis to strike a devastating psychological blow against the Newman empire. Will Victor's uncontrollable jealousy drive him to commit an unforgivable act of violence against his oldest rival right there in the hospital? A vicious, explosive confrontation erupts right beside Nikki's bed, turning her sanctuary of healing into a toxic battlefield. Victor aggressively accuses Jack of preying on a blind, vulnerable woman to satisfy his own twisted vendetta against the Newman family. Jack, refusing to be intimidated by Victor's legendary wrath, stands his ground with unwavering resolve. He fiercely calls out Victor's toxic, controlling behavior, explicitly stating that it was Victor's relentless stress and manipulation that contributed to Nikki's tragic physical collapse. The tension in the sterile hospital room becomes thick enough to cut with a knife as the two powerful titans clash over the woman they both deeply care for. Caught in the terrifying crossfire of their hatred, who will Nikki choose to banish from her sanctuary when forced to make an impossible decision? In a shocking turn of events that leaves Victor completely paralyzed, Nikki issues a devastating ultimatum. She fiercely defends Jack Abbott, telling her husband that Jack provides the genuine peace and comfort that Victor has systematically destroyed. Her words act as a lethal dagger to Victor's monumental ego. To hear his wife, the love of his life, declare that his greatest enemy is her only source of comfort is the ultimate, soul-crushing humiliation for the Newman patriarch. Victor is left standing in the wreckage of his pride, realizing that his wealth and power cannot force Nikki to love or trust him again. How far will a thoroughly humiliated and dangerously enraged Victor Newman go to reclaim his wife and utterly destroy Jack Abbott once and for all? While Jack is entirely consumed by his devotion to Nikki, a terrifying and lethal threat is rapidly closing in on his own life. Jack's emotional investment in the Newman matriarch is creating a fatal blind spot in his own defense. The phantom killer known as Dr. Lawrence Markham, who has been horrifyingly exposed as the sinister Martin Lawrence, is still actively hunting the Abbott patriarch. Markham is not acting alone. He is executing a highly lucrative, ironclad assassination contract funded by a mysterious, billionaire shadow employer who wants Jack permanently erased from the map. While Jack sits by Nikki's bedside offering comfort, the Grim Reaper is sharpening his knives in the dark alleys of Genoa City. Is Jack's noble devotion to Nikki inadvertently setting the stage for his own violent and bloody demise? The whereabouts of Dr. Markham remain the most terrifying mystery currently plaguing the Genoa City Police Department. This phantom killer brilliantly slipped through the fingers of Detective Burrow, utilizing a hyper-realistic silicone mask and forged federal documents to orchestrate a massive prison break with Patty Williams. He is now a ghost, moving silently through the city, heavily funded by his shadow employer and armed with a singular, lethal objective, the total elimination of Jack Abbott. The police are entirely baffled, and the Abbott family security is stretched to its absolute limits. Where is Markham hiding in plain sight? And who is the ruthless billionaire pulling his deadly strings from the darkest corners of the corporate underworld? Back at the Abbott mansion, Diane Jenkins is spiraling into a frantic, terrifying state of panic and fury. She and Carl have been working around the clock, implementing extreme shadow security protocols to protect their home from the contracted assassin. However, Diane is watching in absolute horror as Jack spends all his waking hours at the hospital, emotionally tethered to Nikki Newman. Diane's fury is twofold. She is intensely jealous of the emotional intimacy Jack is sharing with her historic rival. And she is petrified that Jack is physically walking into a death trap by leaving the heavily fortified mansion. She sees her husband slipping away emotionally while simultaneously exposing himself to a sniper's bullet. Will Diane's absolute desperation to protect her husband and her marriage turn her into a ruthless monster herself? The convergence of these volatile storylines is creating the perfect, apocalyptic storm in Genoa City. Victor Newman is consumed by a jealous rage and wants to psychologically and professionally destroy Jack Abbott. Dr. Markham is a ghost with a loaded weapon, determined to assassinate Jack to fulfill his dark contract. Could these two sinister paths inevitably cross in the shadows? Would a desperate, humiliated Victor Newman stoop so incredibly low as to facilitate or ignore an assassination attempt just to permanently remove his rival from Nikki's life? The dark conspiracy deepens as the lines between corporate warfare and outright murder become terrifyingly blurred. Could Victor become the ultimate shadow employer, taking over Markham's contract to achieve his darkest desires? The ultimate climax is rapidly brewing, and Genoa City is sitting on top of a massive powder keg waiting for a single spark. Nikki Newman is trapped in a permanent world of darkness, desperately clinging to the light that Jack Abbott provides. Jack is caught in a deadly crossfire between a blind, reignited love and a hidden killer waiting to strike. Victor Newman is entirely consumed by a vengeful, toxic jealousy that threatens to burn his own empire to the ground. And Dr. Markham is lurking just out of sight, ready to execute a master plan that will leave the Abbott family in ruins. When the dust finally settles on this apocalyptic war of love, betrayal, and murder, who will be left standing in the blood-soaked ruins of Genoa City?